Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast presented by our friends over at WinBet. I am your host, John McKechnie, joined, as always, by Mario Puig. It is November 4th. We are into Week 9 of the NFL season. We got a loaded slate to get to, so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in with this Thursday night matchup, Mario. So, I mean, one of the big stunners from last week, something that cost me big in Survivor was the Jets. The Mike White led New York Jets going ahead and defeating the darlings going into the week, the Cincinnati Bengals, who were 10-point favorites in that one. Jets go ahead and pull the upset. Mike White catches a touchdown. It's a whole thing. And now they go into Indianapolis, short week. Indianapolis -10 in this one. I think I know the answer here before I even ask it, but how much of a flash in the pan what was the Jets' performance last week, and what can we kind of expect from them on a short week going on the road here to face Indianapolis?
Well, it's cool that Mike White had the game that he did, and good for him, etc. But it seemed very fluky, and especially the part of Michael Carter and Ty Johnson combining for like 150 receiving yards. Like Ty Johnson normally, I don't know if he had 70 yards receiving all year coming into that game. So the Bengals clearly had some kind of just busted defensive approach, and there's basic stuff they weren't accounting for or weren't executing. I don't know. And the Jets kind of kept going back to it. The Bengals never got on track. So I'd give the credit to the Bengals defense more than the Jets offense. But and background info. Mike White, wasn't he kind of like 3/4 of a Brandon Doty, like the next guy at Western Kentucky, and before that he was just completely non-viable at South Florida. Like it was like a down to the wire competition with two or three other Western Kentucky guys, and he barely eked it out, and then he kind of just coasted on the nature of the scheme that they had. So, I mean, he's clearly gutsy and stuff, but not much reason to think he'll do well the longer he's exposed to NFL defenses.
Right. So therein lies the question for tonight. How do we think that the sort of waiver wire darlings from this week are guys that feel like they're going to start to have those big second halves, whether it's Elijah Moore or a Michael Carter. Can we expect them to fare reasonably well this week and moving forward, or is last week just kind of like a mirage?
So Michael Carter's good, I think, and he obviously did a really good job in that game. But again, the Ty Johnson part is what makes me think like, oh, that's basically never happening again. However, Carter, unlike Ty Johnson, has other reasons to think that he's good. Like there was a reason to think before that game that Michael Carter was good. Ty Johnson less so. So I think what it does is it takes Michael Carter from kind of that do I start him in the flex kind of category to I'm always starting him in the flex now category.
Got it. Yeah, I think that checks out. And then when it comes to Elijah Moore, it seems like he might be coming on, but there are some other pass catchers in that Jets offense that could kind of take some targets off his table.
Yeah. So as far as this game goes, I don't really know what to expect for the Colts approach. I don't really know what to expect from White, I guess, especially. But Jamison Crowder is always going to draw targets at a certain per snap rate. That's just always going to be there. He's always going to catch it at a certain rate. He's pretty constant. I guess Keelan Cole and Denzel Mims are going to fight for the scraps, and with Elijah Moore, rather. And, I think Moore, we have reason to believe, is pulling away as far as that goes because, he was really, really good player in college, really good workout numbers before the draft, was reportedly doing really well in training camp, and then, came into the regular season with a lot of hype, basically fell on his face, probably had the yips, probably was disoriented, and then a game like last week can mark kind of just the breaking out of that you would expect of a guy with his sort of pedigree and background of production and athleticism. So we had reason to expect games like that all along with Elijah Moore, and no guarantee that he's arrived, but at the very least, like this catch rate of 47%, it's like, that's not going to last. That's going to go up. So if he keeps drawing usage like he has, numbers like last week are totally reasonable to expect.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good intel when it comes to him, and yeah, the early season struggles, he seems to be putting them behind him, and yeah, I think people had good reason to be in on him during draft season and during fantasy football draft season as well. On the Indianapolis side, things seem to be clicking. Carson Wentz, I think, is a guy that you can start fairly comfortably these days, as crazy as that sounds. I'm not saying it pains me to say it, but man, I was way out on Carson Wentz going into this year and the Indianapolis experiment. He still has those ridiculous mistakes that he's able to make seemingly every single week, but he's also putting up production. And then obviously Michael Pittman is doing well. How do you expect that this Indianapolis offense to perform against a Jets defense that really hasn't gelled all that well?
I don't know. I don't think Wentz is playing very well. I think he's pretty dependent on penalties, and when he does make ambitious throws, he becomes turnover prone. So most of the time he just doesn't really try to take risks, or if he does take a risk, it's in the form of throwing it up as high as he can at Michael Pittman when Michael Pittman's on, someone smaller than him, which makes sense. That's a smart move, but it's I think it speaks.
You tweeted that yourself. The way to go these days is to just get the safeties to creep up and then go deep.
What I was saying is, particularly with the global climate collapsing and the increase of typhoon games, you're going to want to see the wishbone offense, and by 2023 at the latest, because that way you only throw it like 15 times a game. You run it with 3 different running backs, like all the analytics guys want us to. And that'll be like a way to not be affected by the weather. And then with the safeties, when we replace all safeties with just more linebackers in response to the wishbone, then you go deep, underthrow the ball every time, get that interference, look real good like the Colts do. Anyway, the Colts should run it more with Taylor. They don't have a wishbone. They just do the stupid throws, and the defensive pass interference isn't. To be fair, they are thinned out. I mean, T.Y. Hilton not 100%, Paris Campbell not out there. Zach Pascal probably shouldn't be your second best receiver. It makes sense to force it to Pittman when that a beat up Hilton is your second best option. But they were not actually very efficient in that game, and like even the touchdowns, it's kind of just they were probably going to score anyway, and the usage wasn't especially significant. It only spoke to their intention of using Pittman, and that is definitely going to remain the case here. He's going to have to keep getting a lot of targets against the Jets. I would guess Bryce Hall is probably the toughest matchup. Like he's probably like 6'1", 210, something like that. But the other 2 corners, Brandon Echols, he's like 5'11", 175. The slot guys, Michael Carter, the other Michael Carter, and Javelin Guidry, or however you say it, they're like 5'9". So Pittman has a good matchup here, and I don't know of a way the Colts can run right now without trying to get him more targets.
Right, yeah, he's just kind of the only show in town. So I don't know. As far as Thursday games go, especially when there's no baseball anymore, I'll be tuning in the full time, and I think it could be treated to a somewhat enjoyable game, even with the Jets caveat baked in. All right, let's jump on over to Sunday. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this one. We got Bills going down to Jacksonville to face the Jags. Jags find new ways to bottom out seemingly every week. They think they were only like 4-point dogs or something, or maybe it was closer to 6 last week against Seattle, but they had a nice little no-show completely, and now they get what I still believe to be the best team in the AFC coming into town. So I think that this is rightfully one of the more inflated lines of the week, with the Bills checking in as 14.5 point favorites, and I like the Bills in this one. I think there's good reason to think that Josh Allen can be QB1 this week for fantasy, and Stephon Diggs near the top of his position at receiver. There's just not a whole lot that I think the Jags can do to really slow the Bills here.
Right, there's nothing they can do. Excuse me. So I would a little bit be concerned about the Bills kind of having such an easy day off that Josh Allen doesn't need to do a whole lot, but you have to start him in season long just because if he does play, 2 quarters, he'll probably have like 25 fantasy points. So, Jacksonville's a mess. They're not a real team. There's a lot of things wrong with them, more things probably than even we can see from the outside, and it's plenty obvious from the outside. Yeah,
it's a total disaster. It's really tough. I guess touching on the Jacksonville side from a fantasy perspective here. Obviously, it's a tough matchup, but what do you do if you have a James Robinson going into this week?
I think I'd start James Robinson most of the time, just because you probably don't have a better alternative that came up. I guess if you have like Elijah Mitchell or somebody like that, you might prefer them. But generally, I think James Robinson, just by being a starter, even if he's on a heavy underdog, has at the very least flex value. And I don't know. I guess we got to watch out for the heel, though. Is that like totally
right?
clear?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the crux of the matter. Because he didn't practice Wednesday.
Well, I wouldn't have faulted someone of like thinking like, oh, I don't even want any Jags, not even James Robinson. It's such a bad setup for them. But yeah, with the heel, if that's like affecting him at all, I think try to find something else. No big deal if you can't. But if he's in and he's only a limited practice on Friday, that's a lot different than 2 practices at least.
Right, exactly. So keep an eye on the injury report for James Robinson, but that's really the only guy from this offense that you're really trusting right now from a fantasy point of view. Let's get on over. We got Texans, Dolphins down in Miami. Dolphins 6.5-point favorites in this one. 2 teams that are it's hard to know what to make of them on a given week. Davis Mills obviously had the good fantasy game recently, but even still, I think it's going to be Tyrod Taylor taking back over for Houston. So that I think gives them a puncher's chance in this one. And I don't really think that the Dolphins can be trusted with laying almost a touchdown, really.
Right. I guess you could imagine, I don't know, the Dolphins offense doing well, like maybe with Devontae Parker back. There's a huge difference with that and Waddle on the field at the same time. Like maybe with Gesicki and Waddle, they're not quite as explosive, but Parker, I don't know, he's been injured a lot and therefore really inconsistent, but he's been very productive whenever he has played. So he's a big difference maker when he's out there. Maybe they between guys like Parker, Waddle, Gesicki, whoever, maybe they have enough talent to kind of just do well against the Texans defense, even though they're not good as a team. And the dueling offensive coordinators thing in Miami is just insane. They're just so ridiculous as a team. So you're right. 7 points, I don't want to bet that either. But maybe if they cover, maybe that's the reason. It's just like the receivers kind of just carry them against a backup caliber defense with Houston. I can imagine the Houston offense having a pretty rough go of it. I don't know. I almost wonder if they're going to use David Johnson more this week, and they didn't use him last week because of the trade deadline, and maybe with the trade deadline gone and him not moved, their interest reverts back to making him look good so that in the offseason he signs with the team and gives them a decent comp pick. Because it doesn't really make any sense to use him like they did last week, trying to make him look like crap behind Scotty Phillips of all. Scotty Phillips? What are we doing here? So anyway, I shouldn't assume anything, especially anything generous with them. But if they aren't some of the dumbest people in the world, they would get David Johnson going or try to.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Is there any other fantasy value to be mined from this Houston offense, or is it just a stay away even from like punt plays in DFS?
I don't want to rule out a guy like Brandon Cooks just because he's as good as he is, but there's nothing obviously good there for Houston.
Yeah, it's tough scene down there. They're lucky that Jacksonville exists. All right, moving on. We got Falcons going to New Orleans to face off against the Saints. The Saints are one of the tougher teams to read right now based on the quarterback situation, obviously with Jameis Winston going down, and then we get the news down the pipeline. I believe it was yesterday that Michael Thomas would not be playing this season. So nuts to me for all my 11th round Michael Thomas shares out there. Too bad on that one. But how do we think that the Saints kind of move forward from here? Obviously, it was an emotional win last week over their division rival Bucks. They got another division rival coming in, but this is a lot to kind of recalibrate if you're the Saints.
Yeah, I don't know what they can do other than just give the ball to Alvin Kamara as much as they can, and if it doesn't work, I don't know what else. I know they got Callaway and they got a couple other guys pitching in here and there, but basically you cannot count on throwing the ball against any NFL defense with Trevor Siemian as the quarterback. So it could be fine. I'm sure Sean Payton, or I'm willing to believe anyway that Sean Payton will have a reasonably clever game plan to adjust for the circumstances. But Kamara's the only real threat, I guess, in Callaway.
Right, because in my opinion, the Saints don't have anyone to kind of elevate the quarterback play, like other than using Kamara, and that eventually has diminishing returns if you have to target your running back, 14, 15 times in a game. It's just teams are going to start to figure it out, even the Falcons. So, it's going to be an ugly offense. I think there's a pretty good reason why the over-under in this game just sits at 41.5, one of the lower ones of the entire week, and with good reason there. And then on the Falcons side, we've seen what the Falcons look like without Calvin Ridley, but now we kind of are on the understanding that we're not going to see him here for a while. So your thoughts on this new, Atlanta pass catching group, knowing that we don't have Ridley?
Yeah, I don't really think anybody else is going to step up aside from Kyle Pitts and basically Cordarrelle Patterson, because Russell Gage, I don't know what he is exactly, but I think he's the more we see of him, the more it's clear. Like, he needs at the very least one kind of like elite level receiver on the field before he can get enough space to create a viable throwing lane to the quarterback. Like, not even getting targeted with Ridley out last week. That's pretty rough. So with that said, like, I don't think we have any reason to believe that's going to change. Like, if Gage keeps being bad and him and Zacchaeus are just the best that they can put on the field, then I don't think there's really any room to, negotiate that. It's basically just however far Pitts and Patterson can take the offense is how far it goes. And like Hayden Hurst, I guess I would sooner bet on than these receivers.
Big of you to say. That says a lot about the state of this current Atlanta Falcons group of pass catchers. And then, when you bake it into the context of this game where they're going on the road and they're facing, what is still a tough New Orleans defense, do you have any concerns about, the guys that you're normally starting, your Mike Davises or your Kyle Pitts?
Definitely concerned for Mike Davis, but that was kind of no matter who they're playing kind of thing. Definitely gets worse with the Saints. Their run defense should still be fine. I don't think you can really bank on the run defense getting tired from bad Trevor Siemian offense, because on the other side we have bad. Not that it's Matt Ryan's fault, but the Falcons are probably as bad right now as the Saints are with Siemian. So the Falcons defense could get tired just as fast as the Saints one. I just don't see how the ground game gets going for the Falcons. On the other hand, a guy like Pitts, I think. Not that he'll be super consistent exactly, but to me, he's matchup proof at this point. I don't care who he's playing. And Patterson, that's about it. But largely just because Patterson's so busy as a pass catcher, I don't really expect him to run well here. Yeah,
he's been one of the surprises of the fantasy season, of course, and you can still roll him out there with some level of confidence. Broncos going down to Dallas to face the Cowboys next. The line implies that Dak will be good to go here, but obviously with the Cowboys checking in as 10-point home favorites against the Broncos team that obviously got the win over the football team last week, and the Cowboys were able to pull it off. Sans Dak a week ago up in Minnesota. So what are your thoughts on this one?
I don't know what to think of the Broncos exactly, and I can't tell what that Von Miller trade means. Like, does that mean it should mean that Fangio's done, right? Like, they're saying, like, this is, play out the rest of the season, but we are not concerned with this phase of our team management.
When you let like one of the best defenders in franchise history, you're kind of conceding when you say, like, we're going to send him to the Rams, we're sending him to an actual contender. That I think that says a lot, and it probably doesn't send a particularly good message to that locker room, especially for the rest of the season.
Right. So if Fangio's losing any traction there, that's the kind of thing. It just kind of puts a wild card element in play where you don't know what kind of team is going to show up relative to the talent and the way they might match up. Like, sometimes that stuff matters less if the teams get weird with their internal politics or whatever, and maybe that's happening there. But even if Denver tries their best and are at their sharpest focus wise, I think you maybe could reason, Dallas by 10 if Dak is out there, let alone the 8.5 or whatever. So Dallas defense looks still pretty good this year. I mean, they get a lot of credit, obviously, for winning with Cooper Rush in there instead of Dak against the Vikings. So if Teddy Bridgewater is going against a good defense, that's when Denver's in 10-point, at risk of losing by 10 points, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. So I think that this is a very rough spot for Denver here. And just looking at the betting numbers over on Yahoo, checking in as 9.5 point favorites for Dallas, and 68% of the bets have been put on the Cowboys for that one. And Cowboys always kind of overdraw their side regardless, but even still, it's a pretty strong sentiment that the Broncos are in deep trouble here. On the Broncos side, from a fantasy perspective, obviously we saw Jerry Judy get back in the mix last week. How do you think that he'll be able to do here now that he's got his footing back under him?
I think ideally we'd have him running against probably Anthony Brown a lot, but Judy in the slot more so probably faces Jordan Lewis, who he's not a bad player, but he's probably tougher, more intimidating to throw at right now than Trevon Diggs. So if I don't know, I would imagine at least one
really?
of
more intimidating than Diggs. I mean, Diggs is getting all the press.
Sorry, I meant to say like Diggs is more intimidating, thus like creating like a funnel toward the slot. Sorry, but yeah, I think I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine both of Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton getting slowed in this game. So maybe it's a good game for Teddy yardage wise, but I worry about him kind of getting to like 280 yards and 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions kind of thing, like not closing the deal in the red zone, especially.
Yeah, that could certainly be an issue. I could definitely see that. We've seen that borne out time and time again. Before we get on to our next game, we are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors over at Blue Wire. All right, keeping it rolling here. We got the Panthers going up against the Patriots. Panthers 3.5 point home underdogs. The Patriots obviously kind of maybe had one of the banner wins of last weekend. Although how many banner wins can you rack up against the Chargers before they stop being those banner wins? We'll get to the Chargers here in just a bit, but the Patriots go out to Los Angeles and get the job done there. They go into Carolina now. Carolina got off the mat last week, but how much credit can you really give them in doing so against Atlanta? So I know 3.5 points for an offense that's not particularly explosive. It is not an ideal spot to be laying on the road here, but I still think the Patriots go in and get this done. Not super comfortably, but I think by more than a field goal.
Yeah, I think, last week it was an interesting game for the Patriots because they demonstrated a certain level of dangerousness as a team, a certain level of quality as a team, and yet the offense, or at least the passing game, didn't really do anything. So it's not normally true that you can beat a team on the road like the Chargers with your passing game doing nothing. The win, somewhat fluky then to me, but the Panthers can't do anything on offense. They're as bad as anybody on offense, I think, like I guess other than the Jaguars. It's insane how bad they are. And it's in a way where it's like you can't possibly even blame it all on Darnold at this point. Like he's probably bad, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if people appreciate just how hopeless they have been for about a month. It's in a way like you would I don't know, it's almost like they have a pedestrian playing quarterback or something. And yet like these receivers, Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall, like however bad their numbers look right now, it's like they're not that bad. And yet I don't know if I can really blame it all on Darnold when so many of it is like drops by Robbie Anderson, a player who's not, normally a star or anything, but not that bad either. And I feel like part of it is the players are being used wrong. I don't think they have any idea what to do. Like, I don't know if the coach is in charge, Joe Brady, Matt Rule. I don't know if they have any ideas. And I don't know if at this point they're going to just start doing like desperation stuff, like moving stuff around. I almost think they should, like that would be good if they did, because I don't know if they could manage it any worse than they have to this point. But in any case, I can't see the Panthers scoring like on anybody, let alone the Patriots. So I got to go with the Patriots for even though, like you said, them being liable to have a goose egg as their own passing game and playing on the road. It is a lot of points, but I can't pick the Panthers in any scenario, really.
The Panthers can just kind of crater themselves and do a lot of the work to get the Patriots that cover. What do you think this says just kind of in general about Joe Brady? He's someone who was obviously one of the hottest coaching candidates in football, but either level. After that 2019 LSU run, goes to Carolina, and now this is what the offense looks like, and it's not like this is his first year. So, I mean, is this something where the Panthers might need to reconsider things? And has his like kind of stock as this offensive genius, the next guy up, the next McVay potentially, is that kind of going out the window?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's still young for a coach. He could improve, I guess, but the problem in the meantime is I don't know if we have any reason to believe that he's better than, just like anybody else, really. And waiting on a coach to develop is not really something that not most teams anyway have the luxury of doing. Like, unless you're in a severe, I don't know, maybe Houston could justify that with their rebuild that they got to do. But anybody else will look at it and be like, what do you mean a 33-year-old who's never accomplished anything? Like, why? On what basis do we single out this guy for this exceptional treatment? And it gets harder to justify that when you look back at I know it's been a bad season for Terrace Marshall, but like I was just saying, I kind of blame the Panthers for a lot of that. But in addition to him, we had a first overall pick quarterback, 2 receivers who I think within, I don't know, maybe you could argue right now Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are both top 5 receivers, and if you don't, 2-3 years at most will that be the case. First round running back, probably the best offensive line in college football that year. So all of that being true, it's more so kind of it would be more shocking if he didn't have the results that he did that year. It wasn't as easy to call that 2 years ago.
We had to turn the light switch on basically because LSU had struggled with amazing talents previously. He just kind of made it. He just kind of made it possible for those guys to make the most of their.
It would have been incredible if he managed to make them anything other than as good as they were. And we couldn't know 2 years ago just how good, especially Chase and Jefferson are. But yeah, Burrow being a first pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, first-round running back. It's incredible how much talent was on that offense. And, maybe even Cam Cameron could have had that sort of season with them. Probably not, but maybe.
But maybe. I mean, again, we saw some bad offenses at LSU with some really good players for like the previous decade prior to that one, and have kind of gone back into a shell. But enough about that. And then one last detail here. Would a Christian McCaffrey return here change your mind at all as far as how Carolina might function and may be able to move the ball on the Patriots? He was limited on Wednesday.
Yeah, I guess I should have given that more thought because generally you wouldn't let a running back change the calculus of a game that much. But part of the background here is Chuba Hubbard is not actually playing very well. And maybe it doesn't change the result of the game, but it does change the nature of the Panthers offense if McCaffrey's out there. And, going from kind of a 0 in the backfield to something could change the equation a little bit. It gives Darnold more yardage after the catch production that you can project into the box score. So it changes something for sure. I think I'd still have to pick the Patriots, but I definitely would get more nervous about the point total at least.
Okay, that's
the spread rather.
That's definitely fair. Before we get on to our next game, we got a question from our listener, Trilly. He got offered DJ Moore and Leonard Fournette for Devontae Adams. What would you do?
Oh man, that's tough. I don't think I would do it though. I'm so worried about. Not that I'm worried about DJ Moore being wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 or something like that, but he's been suffering with the rest of the Panthers offense. So it is very concerning what's going on with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And I don't know if we have reason to assume Rodgers will play again this year, depending on how the disciplinary aspect of this is handled. But even if it's Jordan Love, I feel so much more confident in Devontae than I do DJ Moore with this Panthers offense right now.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm slightly more optimistic maybe that Rodgers is just back next week and that this story gets swept under the rug.
That would make it a slam dunk for me if If Rodgers is out there, I would much rather have Devontae.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, I'd be just worried about the health of this Panthers offense. I don't want to get too much more exposure to it midseason now that we've kind of seen its true colors. All right, let's get on over. We got the Ravens playing host to the Vikings. The Vikings, of course, coming off of that disappointing home loss to a backup quarterback. The Ravens coming off the bye, and last time we saw them, they were just giving up points and yards everywhere you looked against the Bengals, and really have been suffering on defense for a lot this season. So we're seeing an over-under here at 50, one of the highest totals on the board this weekend. Is this one that you're really attacking for DFS?
I don't know, man. I really like Lamar, obviously, and I really hate the Ravens' defense the way it's looked this year, with the exception of the Chargers game, I guess. So I think the Vikings have a lot of really, really good players who should be able to kind of threaten them similarly to how the Bengals did, but I don't see specifically the yards after the catch on the field with the Vikings pass catchers. Maybe if a guy like Amir Smith-Marset would do a lot after the catch, but Adam Thielen, he generally catches the ball, gets tackled not long afterward. Justin Jefferson is, he's elusive, but he's not exactly a Deebo Samuel or a Jamar Chase exactly. He's more of almost like another Thielen kind of guy who just kills you with his route running over and over and over, but he doesn't really run over you so much. So I don't know if we can bank on the Ravens tackling as poorly on the pass catchers in this game. Like Conklin's not doing Uzoma stuff either. So it would need to be picked up by Dalvin Cook, I guess, to make us to have a similar result as the Bengals, a similar level of threat to the Ravens defense as the Bengals did. And that's where it gets interesting for me, I guess. Like I'm kind of a Dalvin truther naturally, and I feel like he hasn't really had the game that he's capable of, and it feels inevitable that he have a big game. So I'm really interested in Dalvin Cook. I might be, I don't know, not less interested than most people in the receivers, but it's possible. Like I might not feel confident enough that both go off to spend up the way I need to get the level of exposure that most people will this week in DFS.
Okay, all right, that definitely makes sense, and I like Dalvin in this spot. I think a lot of attention from the DFS side will be paid to that Ravens secondary. Especially after the way that they were lit up the last time out. I think that might be, something that's burned into people's brains a little bit. On the Ravens side here, we know that Marquis Brown and Mark Andrews have pretty good matchups here. Do you see Rashad Bateman? I thought that he looked pretty good last time out. Do you think that he continues to maybe take another step forward? And, with the Vikings having to expend a lot of those defensive bandwidth and slowing the Andrews and the Hollywoods of the world, that Bateman could get loose here.
Yeah, he's definitely doing well so far, and these Vikings corners are not very good. I almost wonder if the Vikings will try to call more zone coverages than they normally do, both to kind of keep the defensive back's eyes on Lamar Jackson to minimize the run threat that he poses, and also with the ostensible attempt to confuse Lamar with the coverage combos. But it's going to be interesting to see what kind of effect a guy like Bateman has on those scenarios, because I think in the past that was one of the more difficult spots for Lamar's. Like they put 5 defensive backs on the field, run zones every play. He can't get the rushing threat going on his own because there's always 2 or 3 guys watching him all the time when he breaks the pocket. But having a guy like Bateman, and not that I have a specific background or awareness of like his background against zone coverages, but that might be kind of just enough of a change from those past scenarios where Lamar struggled that he does fine now. Like maybe Bateman is enough more ammo to utilize to get through it. And if Bateman can kind of just like, or cumulatively, however they do it, if the Ravens can kind of just keep the ball moving and not get in too many like 3rd and 12 type things, then especially if they can get the run going at all, I think the Mark Andrews seam threat is how you most consistently break a defense that's trying to play zone on Lamar underneath. And if Bateman does present that kind of thing, it's easier to imagine, I guess, the shootout. So I don't know, maybe you can fit in like a Lamar Bateman Andrews stack or Lamar Bateman Brown stack, Dalvin Cook, something like that. I know that's not cheap what I just described, but it might make sense to, depending on how the rest of the slate shakes out.
Yeah, I don't have the salaries pulled up right in front of me, but I can't imagine that Bateman is too much, so that could be...
He's not 3,400 anymore, whatever he was the last time. Yeah, he's got to be like 54, 48 or something, probably.
But yeah, the sub 4K days certainly over already when it comes to Bateman. Before we get on over to our next game, we got a message from our friends over at WinBet. There's one thing we appreciate here at RotoWire. It's making good decisions, and even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you with RotoWire's newest partner, WinBet, the premier digital casino and sports book app. WinBet is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. WinBet brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WinBet's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at Baccarat. WinBet is currently available in 6 states. That's Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WinBet, the possibilities are limitless. WinBet is currently offering all RotoWire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WinBet now. That's WYNNBET. WinBet, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. We also got a message from our friends over at Yahoo DFS. The new NFL season is underway, and Yahoo is excited to kick off daily fantasy football. There will be a ton of big prize contests throughout the season on Yahoo, including their multi-entry contests now being shark-free. To celebrate the beginning of football season and Yahoo Daily Fantasy becoming shark-free, Yahoo is giving all listeners the opportunity to claim free $10 in contest entry credit. Users can take advantage of this free $10 in contest entry credit offer to join one of Yahoo's biggest contests. In addition to the free credit, Yahoo has a $1 million DFS football contest live. The $1 million contest features $1 million in total prizes, including first place receiving $100,000 and an entry to the first ever Yahoo Fantasy Football Championship live finals event, which will occur at MGM National Harbor in Maryland this December. Play daily fantasy football on Yahoo this season. Visit sports.yahoo.com/dailyfantasy/welcome to claim that free $10 and to get started. Again, that's sports.yahoo.com/dailyfantasy/welcome. All right, Mario, moving on from the Ravens-Vikings, we're getting to a AFC North divisional clash. We got the Browns going to Cincinnati, the Battle of Ohio, to face the Bengals. Bengals 2.5-point favorites in this one, so obviously not getting the love that they were a week ago, where they were giving 10 on the road. They're going up against a Browns team that I think is kind of on the cusp of falling apart a little bit. I mean, things are just kind of a mess there, and for them to lose to Pittsburgh last week in an ugly game, they've got the injuries. They obviously have the Odell stuff hanging over them. It's just I don't know what to make of this Cleveland team right now. I have a hard time doing anything but backing the Bengals here, even coming off the upset to the Jets.
Yeah, it's a mess with Cleveland, and I don't know how bad it's going to get, but it seems like it's already pretty bad, and Cincinnati doesn't have anything like that to deal with. I think even if Cleveland were fully focused and had Odell Beckham, I wouldn't feel all that concerned about taking Cincinnati at 2.5. But it is interesting that it looks like about 70% of the volume of bets is on the Bengals, and yet the line is not moving. So maybe a few people are going to lose a bunch of money on the Browns this week. But looks like they're making bigger bets than the Bengals ones.
Yeah. So important to point out the difference in the splits between the bets and the actual handle itself when it comes to that. So 70% of the bets being on Cincinnati, that does create like the proverbial liability for a given book. But we'll see how that shakes out. As far as Cincinnati's offense goes, even though the defense kind of was the main storyline a week ago against the Jets, the offense still, I thought, looked pretty good, so what do you think of them going into the matchup against a Cleveland defense that, even with all that we've said about Cleveland so far, is still pretty solid?
Yeah, I think T. Higgins especially is a problem for these Cleveland corners. I guess Greedy Williams could match up against him, but I don't know, that sounds like it would be a weird assignment, like to have Greedy shadow him, and then Greg Newsom's playing really well and everything, but a guy like him, a guy like Denzel Ward, their talents matter less against a player as big as Higgins. And Jamar Chase, whoever's running against, we, I guess, give him the advantage for the time being. So between that and, Tyler Boyd, I think is still good. It's just, it's kind of been a season where Chase has stolen the spotlight a bit. But anyway, between the three of them and Uzoma being a viable check down option, I think they've got plenty of ammo to threaten the Browns. Like I don't think the Browns defense can just weather all of that easily. And obviously better, even a better defense might not be able to handle the Bengals pass catching combination. So yeah, I don't really see a scenario where Burrow struggles so much unless he just kind of inexplicably has an off day, because even if Myles Garrett's a problem, even if the pass rush is a problem, however it does, or however it gets to Burrow, he should still have opportunities to do, his own damage. And the Cleveland offense, aside from Chubb, I don't know what there is there. Like there's, you can maybe sell out against the run enough to slow Chubb enough to basically tame the whole Cleveland offense. And Baker Mayfield, he's not a bum quarterback or anything, but he's not that good. And taking the best receiver off the field is not going to help. I know some Cleveland fans are caught up in the target data. Look how much better he is with Rashard Higgins. Yeah, well, I don't know. I like Higgins and everything, but you're going to make a guy like him a lot worse by taking a guy like Beckham off the field. Jarvis Landry too. So I think the Bengals are kind of like in a position to really settle in and just kind of like play their game and get a win for it. Whereas like Cleveland, it feels like they need some kind of miracle to me.
Yeah, I think so as well. And before we leave this game, do you have any kind of insight or not necessarily a prediction, but what's your take on this Odell Beckham situation? Is he a Cleveland Brown when we talk next week?
I don't think he's going to play for them, but they might just kind of handle him the same way the Texans are Deshaun Watson, and the way the Eagles did Terrell Owens when he had his whatever it was that led to them being done with him. But I can't really see them cutting Beckham, because then what if he somehow ends up on a team that they have to play? I think they're going to do the college coach transfer rant about it. They're just it isn't honorable to let him play for another team. So they're going to hold on to him probably, I think, and he's just not going to play. And then the offseason they'll probably trade him for like a 3rd round pick or something.
Yeah. Okay. That definitely makes sense. And yeah, if you invested in I thought Beckham was going to be an awesome 6th round value this year.
He should have been. Baker. Actually, I take it back. Baker does suck. Baker sucks. If you can't get the ball to Odell Beckham, and if you got to, raise hell behind the scene about it, and I know Beckham probably instigated this probably more than Mayfield did, but we know who Baker is. He runs his mouth on that team too, and helped escalate the situation. And not that I blame him exactly. I don't know what he's supposed to do in that position. But he should be more humble, at least, because he's not very good, and that team is screwed.
Yeah, and that's a team that it's funny, you rewind all the way to week 1, and they really put a scare into the Chiefs, and everyone's like, okay, now we know the Browns are a serious AFC contender if they can go into Arrowhead and do that. Boy, does that look different now as we head into week 9. Before we get to our next game, got a question from our buddy Truly Epic. He wants to know a replacement this week for Aaron Rodgers for this week and potentially next: Tua or Derrick Carr or Taysom Hill. For me, I think it's kind of a layup, Derrick Carr. I think Derrick Carr is, for fantasy purposes, is one of the safer quarterbacks that you could be rolling out there. He's not going to give you anything on the ground, but they're still throwing the ball a ton, and they still have a lot of guys, even with the outside stories being considered. I still think that Carr would be my pick from those 3.
Yeah, I don't strongly disagree, but I do think I would go with Tua, at least for this week, just because I feel like he's
Texans.
I feel like he's got a certain level of safety that maybe the other options don't. But Taysom Hill in week 10, who would they even be playing? I guess generally I would prefer Taysom out of that group, just because he might run for a bunch of yards. So I guess I don't care who they're playing in week 10. I would prefer Hill then, and if possible, I would prefer Tua this week. But whatever difference there might be between him and Carr, if there is one, is probably not much.
Okay. A bit of a split. So your pick there, Truly Epic. Again, Tua or Carr, like the likely guys. But see what's up with Taysom as well. Let's get on over. Speaking of Derrick Carr, we got the Raiders going to New York to face the Giants. Raiders 3-point road favorites in this one. The Giants just play these very ugly games. The Raiders, they're kind of just a strange team in their own right as well. You trust them going on the road all the way out east. That's definitely not an easy trip to be making. That who knows what the weather is going to look like at the Meadowlands on Sunday. So your take on this one?
I'll take the Giants. Raiders have too many problems, and I don't think the Giants are the kind of bad where you feel safe when you play them. It's like
right.
They're bad. They might do stupid things. You might win by 40 points, but among the teams that you can beat by 40 points, I'm always going to be most worried about the Giants somehow beating me. Just, I guess because of especially Jones being just kind of the wild card that he is. So I just think, between the travel and the issues with the Raiders, I think there's too much against them.
So if Saquon Barkley is back this week, that there's reports that his test on Wednesday might have been a false positive, which I guess would theoretically give him a lane towards playing this week. If he's out there, are you rolling him? Are you rolling with him?
Yeah. I don't want to be the guy who has Saquon on his bench. And if he plays like 20 snaps, you need him active.
Yeah. I think that's the right way to go about it. So good to clear that up, and then we'll unpack this just a smidge. But how do you see this Raiders passing game kind of evolving now, knowing what happened this past week?
Yeah, so I guess Zay Jones is going to play more, and I don't know if they have some kind of downfield specialist guy, but more so you're going to have to reformat the offense to get Bryan Edwards going at, even though Ruggs is obviously a deep threat guy, I think the slack that his absence creates still means you have to get Edwards going more, and you can't get Edwards going more by running him further downfield. So I would almost expect them to lower Edwards' depth of target, or the slack to go almost entirely to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. So I guess I view them equally possible, but I think it's those two types of options that they're facing.
All right. Interested to see how that ends up shaking out with the Raiders. Let's go Chargers Eagles. This is one of those games where I think you see the line and you almost feel like it's a trap right off the bat, because the Chargers are only giving two in Philadelphia. Again, I know it's a travel game, west to east, but it's in the afternoon. It's a 4:05 local time kickoff, so that helps things at least a little bit in this particular instance. Chargers, obviously not the team that we thought they were at least 3-4 weeks ago, but I just can't trust the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles, what they did against the Lions last week, I think says more about the Lions than it does about the Eagles. So yeah, I'm on the Chargers here.
Yeah, I know the Chargers have some problems, and I don't know, I guess, or maybe Herbert being the having the hand injury, like maybe that's the basis of all of this. But I don't know, man. I think if his hand isn't completely busted, then Chargers I will take to win, because I do worry about Jalen Hurts just completely laying an egg here, and it's frustrating for his fantasy investors, because he should have he could have anyway had a big game against the Lions. They just did not need to play offense to win 45 to whatever it was. They didn't need to try, and yet they couldn't stop scoring points. The Chargers defense, it's maybe showing some limitations. Like maybe they need to get more serious about stopping the run. But if you stop the run in this case, I think you completely take away Hurts. Like I think Hurts actually should be in an offense more like the one the Eagles had last week, where he throws 20, 25 times and runs 10 to 12 times, and you get a lot of running backs going to kind of just keep the defense playing in heavy personnel and limit the amount of coverage resources they can put on the field. And that's how you, I think, get a more efficient Jalen Hurts. But if they try to do that like 4 wide airing it out stuff against the Chargers, I think Staley's going to get the better of them. even if they're looking somewhat stung right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. What are your thoughts on this Eagles backfield? I've gotten a lot of questions on my, from people this week. I've seen a lot of discussion about it when it comes to this Eagles backfield. You see Gainwell, someone that everyone was pretty excited to throw into their lineup against the Lions a week ago. Turns in 13 carries for just 27 yards. It just didn't really pan out. So, whether it's him or Boston Scott this week, what are your thoughts on how they can perform here against the Chargers?
I don't know. I think Gainwell could have been productive in that game if he weren't playing in like the garbage time, running out the clock part of the game. He almost didn't play. I don't think he played until the fourth quarter. I don't know how he got that many carries in that.
Why are the Eagles doing this? Like that, they were doing this with Sanders too. So I don't know why, if you're out there playing fantasy, that you have any trust that these guys are suddenly going to be the answer, because no one's been the answer so far.
Right. I don't know what the deal was, but when you make a guy like Boston Scott a healthy scratch for the first, 8 weeks, and then after Gainwell has his biggest game, you put him on the bench for Scott. The only thing I can imagine is that they were doing that thing where they're like, hey, Scott had a better week of practice this week. And it's like, your job as a player, a person managing the players, is to get the best cumulative version of themselves on the field. And if you're going back and forth on questions like that and on the basis of who looked best to you at a glance in practice, you're not taking seriously the question of who's actually the best player here and asking, like, what would it actually take to get the best version of the team on the field. You're doing this this arrogant thing where you're like, whatever the answer is probably someplace at the reflex of my gut, and that's what we'll go with. And all of those, whatever the scenario or whatever the answer is, it all seems like nonsense to me. And the best case read, like the most charitable read for the Eagles, is that they, realized too late that Boston Scott is good and that, he deserved playing time, in which case, I'd like at least to see you repent for the first half of the year, not letting him play something. Cumulatively, these things don't add up. So,
No.
But they might get Jordan Howard going in this game because the Chargers do that too high stuff, and they say, run at the middle of the field. And if you're going to run at the middle of the field, it is probably easier to do that, especially if you're talking 10-plus times, with Howard than two 5'8", 200-pound backs. So I have no idea where this is going. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, it is goofy, to say the least, when it comes to this Philadelphia backfield. Before we get on to our last group of games, we got a message from our friends over at Thrive. Thrive is back for another season of fantasy football, and they're running huge guaranteed contests each week this NFL season. With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus only on the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up today and get a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. Here's how you claim your free RotoWire subscription. First, you visit rotowire.com/thrive. Then you deposit a $10 minimum and receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. And then you just play in your first paid contest and you receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. So again, go ahead, visit rotowire.com/thrive for more details. All right, Mario, a handful of games to get here quick before we sign off. Packers, Chiefs. Obviously, the line jumped a full 6 points, maybe even more in some books yesterday with the Aaron Rodgers being out news. Packers going into Kansas City. I still can't trust the Chiefs. I'm not saying that Jordan Love is going to go Mike White 2.0 or anything.
I am.
But, oh, yeah? Well, either way, I think
somebody's got to say it. I'll do it.
All right, there it is.
Yeah.
We have the clip.
Yeah, but no, I do actually. I'm probably more optimistic about Jordan Love than most people, because most people believe that thing about what was it, Tim Boyle? Who was it that they had? And they were saying Tim Boyle's the backup, not Jordan Love. And a lot of people read that as, oh, Jordan Love is worse than the guy who, I don't even know where that guy is from, but he played at some school that I can't remember, and he still managed to have more interceptions than touchdowns as a passer. And people are like, oh yeah, that Tim Boyle's better than Jordan Love. That is not what it was. What it was was that they said Boyle is the kind of guy who we don't mind throwing into a game if Rodgers gets hurt, and if Boyle gets destroyed, then next week we give the starting reps to Jordan Love in practice, and then he starts. They don't want to put Love on the field with backup reps because they consider him too precious to do it, basically. And I know somebody might say, oh, well, they're babying him. Well, they're not now. He's going to play, and he's getting the reps, and the Boyle thing means nothing other than they wanted to protect Jordan Love. So he's better than I think most people imagine, and LaFleur is still a guy who comes up with clever stuff to make his players not look better than they are in terms of smuggling them and making them just products of the system. That's not what I mean, but he can take a good player and make them great. So he might be able to take a below average quarterback and make him an average one, especially against a defense this bad.
I think so as well. I like the Packers in this spot. I think I would like the Packers in this type of spot against almost anybody with that inflated of a line. But, on the other side of it, something's just rotten in Kansas City. I was so unimpressed by the Monday night performance. And, they've been on a downturn for essentially the whole season. That they just haven't really gotten it together. I don't know what really changes for that. So I think the Packers could still theoretically go in and win this one outright even.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is with the Chiefs. I'm inclined to think it's a few things, and one of them is that Pat Mahomes really is holding out too much for the kill shot, and defenses are kind of just approaching them with the stance of, we are not going to allow the kill shot. We're going to give you basically the Hail Mary defense all the time, and you have to figure out a way to move the ball. And normally you would move the ball in that case by exploiting that Darrell Williams check down throw a little bit more often. If the defense is going to have basically 3 center fielders all the time, then fine, just stop trying to strike the center field. Try to get underneath. And some of it is Mahomes just not taking opportunities. He's just probably has something to do with the struggles going multiple weeks now, and he's feeling the pressure. He's feeling the need to become himself again and make these throws that he remembers himself making but hasn't done in a while. And I think it's the reality is you have to just be content to take what the defense is giving you until the defense decides to approach you differently. It's kind of like the Seahawks last year, really. It took longer for us to get at the adjustment crisis point, but defenses have adjusted. The Chiefs have to counter adjust. And one way they could have counter-adjusted is by having the run game do more, but Darrell Williams is not a viable running back. Derek Gore is not a viable running back. If they need the run game to pick up the slack, they don't have the personnel to do it. So they have to become a more underneath passing game, or at least start taking underneath shots until they get different looks. And for some reason, they just could not, find the discipline in themselves to do it the past few weeks, which is perplexing in a way. And maybe maybe that's all their own fault and they can just snap out of it anytime, and maybe that's how they cover here. But short of that, I don't know what they can do.
Yeah, I don't either. And I don't think that it's helping matters that Kelsey has taken a step back this year as well. Almost matching last season's drop total on half the amount of targets. Just 2 yards less per target. I think.
Well, he's got 3 really bad games and 3 really good games, and 2 that are kind of in between. And I don't know, because he was able to do the good games early in the year, and because his struggles are coinciding with the rest of the offense, I think it's at least one of those things. It's not really his fault, that they're I don't think there's anything he could have done really to change this outcome within some amount of margin, but. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting the point too late, but I do have faith that Kelsey will get going here. I just we're looking at the possibility of Mahomes throwing for what 3,800 yards if he doesn't, and I don't know. That seems even more impossible to me.
Okay, fair, but yeah,
I understand your concerns. They're totally reasonable. Yeah.
Okay, fair. All right, I will take it. But we're pretty much out of time here. But before we get out, give me your quick thoughts on Tennessee and this backfield. Is this just going to crater the offense?
It's going to have to look a lot different. They're going to have to change all of the personnel details, everything. I like Jeremy McNichols. I'm glad he's getting a shot. He's quietly been really good this year as a pass catcher, and he was a really good workhorse running back at Boise. So I'm optimistic for him, but there's a ton of slack either way. He's 50 pounds lighter than Henry.
Yeah, it's going to be a very different look there in Tennessee. Let's go wrap things up for this edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Again, brought to you by our friends over at WinBet. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.